These are men who are wired and bombs waiting to go off. Everyday little things that challenge their feeling of being in control. So they could very much, and I believe, do love the women that they've even hurt and injured. But what I tell women when I'm doing the groups is, you see, this has nothing to do with it. Whether he loves you or not is not the point. The point is, can you survive? And are you going to be safe with a person who loves in this way? So the important again thing is to realize that their own insecurities, their own faults and flaws, their own broken pieces inside, whatever you want to call it, they get caught up into, to the point where they're no longer attending to the needs of people around them. They're absorbed into their insecurities and are thinking about them only. They're in that regard very self-centered. And when the insecurities are triggered, they literally are not paying attention to what's going on around them or who's around them. So in their fears and insecurities and rages, they end up harming most often the people closest to them simply because they're there. Whether they're upset about a situation at work or on the job, they harbor all this explosive emotion inside. And the real tragedy is that if you are a person who is prone towards abuse, you're most likely to hurt the people you care about the most simply because they're going to be there when you explode. So love and abuse aren't necessarily things that can't go hand in hand. But you have to ask yourself, even if this person does love you and they're dangerous, are you willing to take that risk and to risk the safety of your children as well?
I believe the key word here is dangerous, because there is situations in every single relationship, right? And you are learning and you have commitment and you use the forgiveness and whatever. How far are you ready or prepared to go with this relationship and learning with this same person? Because it is like everybody has demons inside. So it doesn't matter where you go, the demons are going to be there. So it's a matter of making a decision. Do you want to continue to learn and to continue to be inspiration for this person, or do you want to stop here? But the key word again is the danger that the violent relationship involved. That's something completely different. So abusive parents, then what they do? They go to the kids. How kids suffer when they are growing in an abusive relationship?
Well, the biggest thing that kids suffer from is the absence of feeling safe.
Safety.
That the home is supposed to be a place where everyone feels safe. There's not supposed to be danger inside the home. The home is supposed to be a place that protects you from danger, a place you come to when things are dangerous or threatening. It's supposed to be a sanctuary for safety. These children grow up never really knowing what safety is. All they know is the time in between fights, the time in between when mom gets beaten or I get beaten. Because in 50 to 60% of the cases, if the men are harming and hurting their wives and girlfriends, they're hurting the kids too. It's not like they're going to be abusive to their partners and be kind to the kids. So over half of the situations where men are abusing their wives and girlfriends, they're abusing their kids too. So the first thing is you have a constant sense of anxiety and fear. You see the world as dangerous. If your own home's not safe, why would you think the world is safe? So you have kids that are anxious. They startle when they hear loud noises. If people approach them, they jump real quickly. They learn to be they're on edge. Because when you're in a violent home, you never know when violence is going to happen. So the first thing is that the kids don't know what safety is. Typically, too, is that with younger kids in particular, if there's violence in the home, the kids will blame themselves for it. Because the parents will fight about everything, okay? But what the children will hear is fighting about the kids. So the kids will think it's their fault. And they end up not only not feeling safe, they end up feeling poor about themselves. There's self-concept, there's self-esteem, whatever you want to call it, is low because they feel they're to blame for what's going on in the home. So they don't feel safe. They blame themselves for it. They try to do something and nothing works. And so they start learning at a fairly early age that, things happen in the world around you and there's nothing you can do about it. And then they come up with, by the time they get 14, 15, their motto in life is, you got to do what you got to do. You can justify anything because this is the way the world is. And they end up having a view of families that's not very healthy. Often children, teenagers, when they come out of abusive homes, they often will tell me that they don't want to have children. If that's what childhood is like, they don't want to raise children into that. Now, they invariably change their minds because in today's world, most people are going to have relationships, marriages, and children. But it tells you that they feel like family is something that happens to you, not something that you really want and hope for. So the effects on children can be tremendous and lifelong if, again, the lessons are not learned and there's not somebody available to teach them and help them see families in a different way.
That's very interesting. So there is a part of everybody's involved in a situation. Even if the kid is saying nothing, he is listening and he is getting all this stress. I heard sometimes, it was you in one of my previous interviews talking about the stress in the youth. How common it is?
Well, stress is, for kids in general, it's present. I think people underestimate the amount of stress people live in. They think, well, they're just kids. What are they stressful about? Well, they're just kids, but this is the first time for their job. The first time for a girlfriend or boyfriend that they really have emotions about. It's their first time. They're in school. They're at home. Teenagers today, during school sessions, are rated up more higher in stress than the adults. That's why I really believe that unless there's academic difficulties, kids should have a break during the summer. Now you add domestic violence into this. The stress of going to school and achievement in a world that's much more competitive now than it's ever been. There was a time when a high school diploma guaranteed you some semblance of success. Today, a college degree, a master's degree, a PhD doesn't guarantee you success. So the kids know this, by the way. They know that the world is highly competitive today. So they're stressed out about school and academic performance. They're stressed out now about violence going on in the home. Where's their place of sanctuary and solitude? It's why there's a good number of kids that turn to drugs as a way of chilling and finding peace. And they'll tell you it's because when I'm high, I'm not thinking about all the stuff that I want to think about. So people look at them as being addicts and I guess druggies and this sort of thing. Unfortunately, there's a generation of kids now turning to drugs looking to find peace from the conflict and chaos around them. That's the dangerous thing.
That's very dangerous.
Yes, it is.
Yes. And talking about peace, I want to tell you today how important it is for you to keep that peace in your house, in your home. So it is like everybody accumulates certain amount of tension that needs to be released eventually. So find a way to release that tension between your husband, your kids, or whatever, because other way this is going to destroy your home. I'm talking home different than house. It's very important to consider this. So another question is, what causes women to get involved with abusive men?
Okay, keep in mind, women don't get involved with abusive men. They involve with men who are not honest. Okay? It's not like they're saying, hey, there's an abusive man, I can come and date him. What happens is there's men who put out false images. And the images are easy to buy. Even when I'm working in the groups, there are women that will say, well, I'm attracted to violent men. And then when you really talk about what drew them to men, it wasn't violence. It was their misperception of the man being strong. Somebody who stands up for himself. I was just running one of my groups a couple of weeks ago, and the woman said that she met this guy, and an argument broke out in the club they were at, and the guy pushed the other person back and said, back off. And she thought, oh, that's a strong guy who'll stand up for you. I said, no, that's a guy who puts his hands on people when he doesn't get his way. So I think what happens is there's a misapplication of strength as physical. These are also, by the way, abusive men and insecure men need attention. That there'll be 50 people in the room, the person that needs attention is the one that's the most insecure. There are other people that will command attention. They're not looking for it, but they have a presence, they have an aura, and quietly they command attention. Then you have people seeking attention. The problem is that the people seeking attention get the attention of people, including women. They're noticeable. You have 50 guys in the room, one of them's an abuser, that person will make his presence known. The other 49 are there handling their business, whether it's work or shopping. They're not trying to impress anybody, so they're not loud. People that demand attention are starving for some affirmation of their worth. People that know their worth don't demand attention. They're just conducting the business of their life. So the problem is, I think, insecurity is loud, okay, and people notice it, and confidence is quiet and effective. And so you can look around you and you'll notice the people that are loud, and you won't notice the people that are effective, that are in command of their lives. So the problem is that these guys make themselves noticeable. And the way they make themselves noticeable is misinterpreted as strong, misinterpreted as leadership. Really, it's just people that are insecure trying to sell themselves, or other people are conducting their lives and being themselves.
So some men are just insecure, and some women are confused.
Well, you can say the women are confused, but if the person's lying to you and you believe it, who's confused? Okay, they're looking for someone to believe in. You have a guy that says, "Hey, I'm going to take care of everything." Okay, what's to not like about that? You have a guy that says, "I'm going to stand up and protect my family." Well, okay, what's to be confused about that? You have a guy that says, "I'm a traditional male and I like to handle my responsibilities." Well, traditional men don't control their families. Traditional men are responsible for their families, including their safety. A lot of abusive men will claim to be traditional men because it gives them automatically the status of head of the household. They get it by acclamation. They're not earning it by being responsible. So there are traditional men who've come up with traditional values. But that also includes protecting your household and creating, like you said, a home, not a house, a home that's safe. Insecure men don't claim their responsibilities, they simply claim control of the house. And they don't see the two as being different. So the problem is that regardless of how educated a woman may be, how peaceful and well-intentioned she may be, and healthy she may be, she's got a 1 in 6 chance of finding herself with an abusive guy. There doesn't be anything wrong with you to find yourself involved with an abusive man, because he's not going to announce that at the front end. He'll be kind. He'll be courteous.
That's something common. It is like something happened, he raised his voice, he became abusive or violent, and the woman is asking, what did I do wrong? And you just mentioned, you don't need to do anything wrong. It's just, what is going on with the person? Don't feel guilty. Don't make yourself guilty for the other person's behavior.
Now keep in mind, in most cases you're not going to see that right away. Okay. Now you're going to see somebody who's courteous, who's polite, who courts you, who is putting not his best foot forward, he's putting the foot that you want to see forward. You're not seeing his foot. You're not seeing how he really is. And so over time what happens is, as the relationship, as you become more emotionally invested in the relationship, then you may start seeing abuse happens. In many cases, actual abuse is never seen until after the wedding. And literally, in many cases, the wedding day is the first time that the woman will experience abusive behavior. Because for some men, it's an honor, it's honoring a commitment. For other men, it's almost like a deed of property. Now you're mine, and so I don't have to do anything anymore. So it's not unusual, by the way, for abuse to happen after the wedding, before none. after you move in together, you're in separate places. You go home, he goes home, okay? But once you have a common place to go to, now you're committed. Now the person's in control. Now you're married. Now the person is more in control.
Okay.
Abuse also tends to increase during pregnancy and with the birth of the first child. See, the interesting thing, in most healthy relationships, those things are cause for celebration, moving in together, getting married, having kids. In healthy relationships, they make the relationships better because the commitment is stronger. In abusive relationships, those are things that are seen as stressors and things that are more likely to have you feel more in control. So, many times you don't see the abuse into much later on in the relationship. And here's the dilemma. Your emotions are real. You really love this person. Now that you've seen the abuse, what are you going to do with those emotions?
That's a good question.
See, women don't want the relationship to end. They want the abuse to end. And their dream, their hope is that the relationship can go back to where it was before the abuse, before the violence. And the problem is that as long as that hope exists, there'll be a motivation to try to make that relationship work.
I have here with me some situations that can help women understand when they are in an abusive relationship. For example, when the man criticizes you frequently, that's a sign. When shows jealousy about who you are with and who you talk to, you mentioned that before. When ignores your feelings. When disapprove or stop you from seeing other friends or family. When puts you down and call you names. When criticizes and jokes about your body. When dictates and controls what you wear. When denies or minimizes and blames. When makes all the decisions. When controls the money in the relationship. When prevents you from working or attending school. When makes you doubt yourself and feel crazy. When looks at you or acts in ways that scare you. When give you little or no privacy online or on the phone. When cheats repeatedly and blames you for the behavior. When pressures you to have sex or do things sexually you are uncomfortable with. When pressures you to use drugs or alcohol. When criticizes your parenting or threatens to harm or take away your children. When sends threatening texts and phone messages. When abandons you in an unfamiliar place. When destroys property, this is throwing objects, punching walls, kicking doors. When threaten or hurt pets. When pushes, pulls, hurt, punches, slaps, bites, pinches or kicks you. When threaten to commit suicide or threaten to kill you. When acts like the abuse is not a big deal, denies the abuse or tells you it is your own fault. So here is an abusive person. Why don't women leave abusive men? Because keep in mind, an abusive doesn't have to do all this. It is one or two or three. This is a big list. Why don't women leave abusive men?
Number one, they do. The majority of women leave abusive men. But it's the wrong question. The question isn't why don't women leave abusive men. The question is why don't abusive men let them go? Here's what really happens. These are women whose lives are threatened. Keep in mind that women get killed more often when they've left. Other thing to keep in mind is this too. There's this naive notion that by physically leaving, you'll be safe. these are men that know your friends and have probably threatened your friends, by the way. And when the woman doesn't come to you and stays with you when you invite her to, you might consider the fact that she just saved your life. Because abusive men are known to threaten women by saying, if you go and stay with your mother or your brother or your girlfriend, I will kill you in front of them so that you will know what you are for. Okay? So, number one, the real question is, why don't abusive men let them go? They threaten women with emotional and financial blackmail. They threaten to take the women's children away. Okay? They use their kids as pawns in this chess game of control. They threaten to call Department of Children's Safety to have you removed as a parent. Leave abusive relationships faster. And I was just talking about friends and families. Pictures for years no good. He says, and then if she tries to go, he threatens to kill her.
Okay.
See, it gets back to his insecurities. His insecurities. That if she leaves, then she's taking control. And it comes back to needing to be insecure, needing to be in control.
Sounds like we need to pray a lot. Listening this, let's go to, if
Welcome to Latinos Creciendo with life coach Aracelys González de McCaine.
Yo soy una latina creciendo.
Yo soy un latino creciendo.
Yo soy latina creciendo.
Yo soy un latino creciendo.
Yo soy una latina creciendo.
Yo soy una latina creciendo.
Latinos Creciendo, 602-214-7428. En Latinos Creciendo estamos formando líderes visionarios y mujeres de éxito a nivel mundial. 602-214-7428. 602-214-7428. Únete a este maravilloso grupo de Latinos Creciendo. Yo soy Transformational Life Coach Aracelys González de McCaine, tu coach para tus procesos de crecimiento personal y empresarial. Te prometo que juntos podremos esculpir y sacar a relucir el diamante maravilloso que habita dentro de tu ser. Llama a pedir tu cita personalizada al 602-214-7428 o al 602-472-3107. How fantastic it is to be here with Dr. Jon McCaine. It's very good when you have the chance to talk with person or with people that really knows about what they are talking about. And this is the situation life and living this, how can I call it? They
continue to be abusive, but with dangerous relationships, not only do they continue to become abusive, the violence escalates. That's one of the signs of dangerous relationships. It may start with just harsh words and name calling, move to pushing and shoving, and many relationships will start there. Contrary to popular opinion, all relationships don't progress up to become violent and dangerous relationships. Many just maintain abusive levels of pushing, shoving, and name calling. Then you have these other relationships that are different. They'll escalate up into physical fighting, hitting, punching, and serious injuries, even to the point of lethal violence. So the question is, which way is the relationship going to go? Because relationships evolve like any other relationships. In the forensic arena, it usually evolves to the point where, in my specialty, is domestic homicides. When I go to court, it usually is because somebody in a couple killed the other person. And that's kind of the end game of the relationship. There are signs that we've already talked about that are very important to look at as dangerous relationships, not even unhealthy and abusive relationships, but dangerous relationships. One we've already talked about is the efforts of the abuser to control social contacts with their partner through restricted phone use, through restricted socializing, talking, visiting, controlling who their partner sees. That's a sign of a dangerous relationship. The other is threats of physical harm, including threats to kill. Those are not words that come out of most people's mouths even when they're upset. But threats to harm and to kill is another sign of a dangerous relationship. Others have to do with an escalating pattern of aggression, increased aggression, to hitting, to even the use of weapons and other kinds of things, hospitalizations and emergency room visits. Emergency rooms nowadays are trained to quietly assess for abusive relationships, because a large number of women who are abused in relationships end up in emergency hospital rooms with the partners that hurt them, if they're allowed to go. The most dangerous sign of violence and the potential for homicide in a relationship is choking. That if your partner has at any point put their hands around your throat, that is the top level of danger and potential for violence in a relationship. So those are the 4 signs that you look for dangerous relationships that I'm looking at as characteristic of relationships that end up being in the arena of forensic homicides or domestic violence relationships.
Okay. Situations, thousands and thousands. Men going to the hospital because the woman was violent?
No.
How frequently?
That's very rare.
Okay.
This is the difference. People can be mean to each other, yes. Nasty words, mean words, pushing, and maybe there's an equality there of men and women. But the difference is that because of physical size and strength, when you get to true abusive relationships and people going to hospitals, that's almost exclusively men being violent, putting women in hospitals. Does it happen with women being violent and men going to hospitals or even homicides? Yes, but in the overwhelming majority of cases, 90% of cases, it was self-defense. Even the cases that I go to court on, where a woman has committed a homicide, in 90% of those cases, it was self-defense. That she wasn't killing him, she was keeping herself from getting killed. And I've heard women say that. I wasn't trying to hurt him, I just didn't want to die today.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And so you have to separate that out. There are women who will defend themselves when they're being brutally attacked. And you can't look at that as participating in or instigating violence. In many cases, it's looked at as being mutual combat. Both were fighting. But you have to look at who was the initiator, who was the antagonizer, and who was the person that really provoked and began. If someone attacks you, you have a right and responsibility to defend yourself. If somebody puts your life in danger, you have a right and responsibility to protect your life. In those situations, unfortunately, I've worked with women who have taken lives of their partners. They're devastated. They're devastated. The idea of having taken somebody's life, particularly the life of maybe their son or their daughter's father, is devastating to them. This is an experience that they ends up shaping and affecting them for the rest of their lives, even though they were protecting themselves. So that's where you have to really understand the dynamics of relationships and not just look at who's hitting or who's violent. Is the violent me trying to impose my will on you, or is the violence reactive to me trying to survive a lethal attack or a violent attack? And that's where the forensic arena becomes very important. And women should not be going to prison for not letting their husbands kill them. And laws have changed now, but there was a time where that's exactly what was going on. Now they've been corrected. There have been protections in place and reinterpretations of first-degree murder to allow for self-protection. But there was a time when, for example, men couldn't be convicted of raping their wives because their wives were considered property. Well, the same thing here. Your wife is not your property. It is a commitment and responsibility where people are equally respectful of each other, and that the use of words or violence to intimidate or to force someone to do something they don't wish to do or to keep them from doing something they want to do is abusive and it's wrong.
Let's talk numbers. So when in an abusive relationship, how many women ended death? From your perspective and knowledge.
Well, based on federal statistics, anywhere from 6 to 10,000 women are killed every year.
6 to
6 to
10,000.
10,000 women are killed every year.
That's a big number.
Okay? It's big numbers, but one is too many. Okay? But it gives you
One is too many.
It gives you the idea, and this doesn't count the number of women who are severely injured, severely hurt, life-threatening injuries. You're talking about what has been declared by the Department of Health Services as a national emergency. The greatest risk to women's health today is domestic violence. And I would argue the greatest risk to our country today is domestic and family violence. There's great concern on international issues and concerns, and those are well-founded and warranted. But the reality is that the greatest risk to this country's security, in my opinion, is domestic violence. There's a saying from West Africa called "The ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people."
And I
that
agree.
poster has been on my wall since I was an intern back in the 1980s, because I firmly believe that great civilizations, and I consider the United States of America to be a great civilization, among the greatest ever. But we need to learn this lesson. The greatest civilizations in the world were not conquered from without, they collapsed from within. And the greatest threat to this country is our failure to protect children in abusive homes, and our failure to provide safety of homes for women who are being injured, hurt, and killed in their own homes.
Any particular case, without obviously breaking the confidentiality thing, that you remember and we can share here on the show?
Well, I prefer not to do that because the women who I've worked with who survived, the cases are public record, and so I'd rather not comment on the specifics. There are a number that come to mind, and I think the most important one, and I don't think she would mind, is a woman who survived a potential lethal attack, and her life was changed as a result. And she basically got a tattoo on her arm that basically said, "Freedom from fear."
Whoa.
That was a courageous woman. And I'm hoping that her life has turned out the way that her life deserved to be.
And those courageous people usually ended helping another people and creating organizations and beginning movements to help another people to raise, to go out of those situations. So women rising out of abusive relationship, this is interesting. You have been seeing all the time on the screen these numbers that can help you to survive in situations like those. We are talking about National Domestic Violence Hotline. This is the 1-800-SAFE, SAFE, 7233, or My Sister's Place Catholic Charities. This is 1-480-821-1024, or Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence. This is 1-800-782-6400. You have those numbers on the screen, so you can just take them from there. So a very interesting conversation, Dr. McCaine, and I have some more questions. How are children affected by abusive relationships?
Well, I think we covered that. They grow up in homes where they don't feel safe. They end up losing confidence in themselves because the confidence and image children carry comes from the eyes of their parents. And they end up blaming themselves for what happens. The end result is they get a picture of the world as being a dangerous place to be, because how your home is as a child is the beginning of how you view the world in general. If your home is safe and inspiring, you tend to approach the world in a way that you feel safe and inspired. You approach the world with curiosity and wonder. You're out to discover and learn. If your home is dangerous, then you learn to hide. You hide under beds, you hide in closets. And when you get out of your home, you still are hiding. As opposed to exploring what the world has to offer, you're worried about where the next attack could come from. You're anxious, you're afraid all the time. So you see the world as an extension of your home, a place where you can find love and encouragement, or a place you can find danger and harm. The problem with violence in the home is you can start associating relationships with the potential for being hurt. And it makes it difficult to trust people, to feel safe with people, and to really build a relationship that's honest, open, and caring. You end up defending yourself and keeping distance from people because in your mind, getting close to somebody means the potential of getting hurt. And so it affects children tremendously in terms of how they see the world in general, and how they see themselves in the world, and how they see people and how people interact and what they expect from people. Children growing up in violent homes almost learn to expect hurt and harm.
We usually don't realize how important it is to feel safe. I want to share with my audience when I first received a hug from my husband. That was the time when I felt safe for the first time, including my father. So that was very interesting because it's a feeling. It's like taking a fresh shower. It is like you just feel it, and this is a great sensation. So safety is important and exists, and we need to pay attention to it because those are the signs, and they are there for all of us to pay attention to. So let's talk about what should I do if I know or believe someone I know is in an abusive relationship.
I think this is very important. The first thing you want to do is to keep the conversation going, okay? To maintain connection and contact with the person, because a woman isolated is a woman in danger. A woman who has no connections is a woman who may feel like giving up, who has no protection. So it's important to maintain contact, to maintain a statement about how important the person is to you. Your awareness that they're in danger. Your awareness that it can't be easy. Your awareness that there's probably more going on even than they've been willing and able to admit to. And to still be there for that friend that you know. To be a presence in their life that may be the only place where they can tell some of the truth to. But also understand that you don't have the whole story. Whatever you've heard, it's worse than that. And so it's important to maintain that intention of goodwill, maintain the intention of connection and understanding, because that may be the very thing that ties her over until she can take action. And that may be the very thing that keeps her going. That may be the very thing that keeps her maintaining some sense of sanity, that I'm not crazy, this is really happening, that I don't deserve this. At the same time, encouraging help and support through the hotlines, through safety planning, through resources, and realizing that she's demonstrating courage and even talking about what she wants to do in the future. But the most important thing is you keep her talking because you want her to have a future.
So my expectation is that one commercial or one show can save people's life. If you are seeing this show today, please share with somebody else. This link is going to be available on Facebook, and it's going to be available for you to share with other people, because everybody needs to see the light somehow. And when we see the light, we correct situations. So I encourage you to enjoy the show. After this time we are spending here, see it again and share the link with other people, because I truly believe that one word can change somebody's life. So feeling trapped, feeling not appreciated, and there is this other thing, like the fear to fail. Because I remember, for example, some mothers tell their children, that's not the man for you, that's not the right man for you, and they go with that man anyway, and then when they are leaving the situation, they practically don't have nobody to go to speak about that, because I told you so. And we don't want to fail.
Well, you know, with the women I work with, it's more often the opposite is true. Because keep in mind, the men are not letting her parents know what's going on. And she's not telling. They're showing a whole different thing. She goes to her parents and they say, what, Bill? He seemed like such a nice guy. You just need to work it out. That the men have crafted an image of themselves so that the women tell the truth, they're not believed. So the problem is that even when the women go to help from families, go to help from friends, people are wondering, well, what did you do? He seems like such a nice guy. You know, are you sure? Maybe you can work it out. They've gone to religious and spiritual leaders who will say the same thing, you know, for better or for worse. Well, that's not what this is about. This is about a marriage contract where people are committed. It's not a suicide pact that you have to stay in, even at your life's risk. So even the spiritual leaders who've said, well, divorce is not an option, okay, are not understanding what's going on here. So it's actually more likely that when she goes, the partner has created an image with other people that when she says it's not believable, and in some cases has actually driven a wedge between the family and his wife by being so kind with them, and now telling the family, you know, I'm just trying to do what's right, and she doesn't understand. So the women are essentially alone. The fear is that nobody will believe him, and that he'll win. The police show up and she's hysterical and he's calm. Well, of course she's hysterical. She's been beaten up. He's calm because he's not in danger. And the police are much more trained now, which is really great, to understand this and to separate them out. So the biggest thing is, please don't let these women feel like they're alone. To stand with them, to speak on their behalf, and to show them support and understanding as they're trying to sort through and make decisions about what to do in these very, very difficult situations.
Is there anything I can do to prevent myself from getting into an abusive relationship?
Well, keep in mind, one of the biggest common factors about abusive relationship is speed. Slow down and let the relationship grow on its own. Don't allow the relationship to be pushed, to be moved forward, to have external controls. We need to move in together because the lease is up. No, you move in together because you choose to be together. It can't be some outside condition. So slow. Watch not for abuse. Watch for rigid, inflexible behavior. Does he let you pay for an early date? Does he let you pick the restaurant? Will he let you come and drive and pick him up and take him out? These are all signs of somebody willing to be flexible and willing to give up control. If he's not willing to let you come and pick him up in a car and to take him to a restaurant of your choosing, he's not going to let you have a life after that either.
What an amazing show. Dr. McCaine, it's time to say bye-bye to our audience. I am so grateful for having you here today.
Well, thank you for devoting so much time to this very, very important topic. I appreciate that.
So, see you next Tuesday with another different topic. And that's it for today. I'm life coach Aracelys González de McCaine, and I am here for you.
Okay.
Aquí comienza González de McCaine, presidenta fundadora de Latinos Creciendo, del grupo Mujeres de Éxito Internacional, de la revista Mujeres Empresarias de Arizona y de Latinos Creciendo TV.network televisión vía internet. Reconocimiento otorgado por la organización Miss Latinoamérica con motivo del Día Internacional de la Mujer por su destacado aporte en el crecimiento personal y empresarial de la comunidad latina en los Estados Unidos y el mundo. Mil felicitaciones, Life Coach Aracelys González de McCaine. Siga cosechando triunfos.
Latinos Creciendo es el único show de radio de talento independiente en el estado de Arizona que recibió credenciales de prensa para la histórica visita del Papa Francisco a los Estados Unidos de septiembre 22 al 29 del 2015. En Latinos Creciendo estamos formando líderes visionarios y mujeres de éxito a nivel mundial. Motívate, empodérate, crece con Life Coach Aracelys González de McCaine.
Hemos llegado al final del show favorito de los latinos que están creciendo a lo largo y ancho del mundo. Nuestra cita es el próximo martes de 4 a 5 de la tarde, hora Arizona, Estados Unidos. Los esperamos.